Hello, Avinash. Welcome to the show. So great to see you today.
Katie, thank you so much for inviting. It's a pleasure to be here and speak to you and your audience as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, we connected a while back on LinkedIn, but I remember seeing one of the videos you made around the law of attraction and what you said in terms of energy. It just really resonated with me. So that's why I was really curious to find out more, to interview you today, to sort of dive into all of this. I guess a really good place to start would be for maybe the people who aren't familiar with the idea of the law of attraction. How would you define it? How would you explain it to people who aren't yet familiar with it?
Okay, so this idea of law of attraction, though the name is sometimes misleading in terms of law of attraction, it's like that it is a law and it should work every time. Though it is working every time, but there has to be a certain process to it, which people sometimes miss to understand. So the simplest definition of law of attraction would be: we live in a world which is interactive, a universe which is interactive. Uh, Before we had a belief that your thoughts, your emotions, your belief had no significant role in the world outside. And now we understand, obviously through a lot of science coming up, especially quantum physics, that you have a participation in the universe, right? Your life is, and the events of your life is not in isolation. Your intention, your thoughts, your emotions, it has a role to play in what appears in your life in a way as well. So law of attraction, the simplest language, is the ability we have to influence or create our life events, which, by the way, we are doing every time, every second, because we are thinking, we are feeling, we are believing something. And interestingly, this is a very ancient idea. Almost every spiritual tradition across the world, if you go back to their text, you would find the mention of this every place, right? But now we have more science coming up, which is now, highlighting and kind of demonstrating that how this possibly could be functioning. So yeah, so that will be the definition for law of attraction. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for explaining it. Could you give us some examples of, quantum physics? Because you're mentioning a lot of science here. And I know there's going to be some skeptical people listening to this. They love the science. They love the tangible stuff.
Sure. So one of the famous experiment in science was what we call as the observer effect, right? Which primarily, demonstrated that when you observe a subatomic particle, you are changing with your observation, you're changing the behavior of the particle, right? It's a very famous experiment, what we call as the double slit experiment as well, that you cannot observe a reality without influencing the reality. When the scientists, researcher observed when they were, so the double slit experiment simply was that when they fired a particle of smallest, tiniest particle, what we call a subatomic particle, electron, and when they fired the electron, and there was a two slit, right? So when they're not observing, the electron was passing through one slit. But the moment they started observing the electron, now we know that a particle can be a particle or a wave. There can be two possibilities. It can be a light, it can be a particle. But when they started observing, they somehow found that sometime the particle was becoming a wave, sometime it was a particle. So it was changing the behavior on the spot. Now, obviously, this is a very, very at a subatomic level. And some people would say, though it is true at a subatomic particle level, but it is not true when we see the bigger world, right? But then ask, what is the bigger world made up of? It is nothing but atoms together and what we see as reality. So interestingly, one experiment which literally very powerfully demonstrated that, that you cannot participate in a reality without influencing the reality. And there are many people, like scientists like Max Planck, Niels Bohr, fathers of quantum physics, who were quite ardent believer of this finding in a way. Now, recently in US, we have an institute called as Institute of Heart Math, right? And they do a lot of research on heart. And they found that they're able to measure that there is an energy field around the human heart, right? And what they demonstrated scientifically with the devices, that whatever you feel in your heart has an influencing effect to a certain radius, and anybody coming in that radius for you, right? So my emotional state or my emotions, it can affect your emotional state if you are in my presence in a way, to a certain degree, right? So very recently, IHM has been doing amazing work, And yeah, but many more signs. I'll give you one more example of this quickly. There is a French scientist called as Renaud Poch. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. It's a very quite complicated name. So what they did was they had this lab where they had this kind of a open area made, and they took this recently hatched chicks of a chicken, right? And right from day one, when they got a chick, when the chicks came in, they had a robot. A robot is a robot. What they chose was a random moving robot. There's no direction fixed, a random moving robot. So when they made the robot and they put the robot in the open space, they tracked the movement of the robot. It was a very random movement across that area. There's no significant pattern which can be seen. One. Once the chicks were there, and right from day one, they put this robot with the chick, right? The chicks started believing that the robot is their mother, So the chicks followed the robot every day when the robot was moving. Now, after some time, what they did was they took the robot, right, and the chick, and they separated them together. Now, in this complete big arena, on one side, they made a kind of a small place where the chicks were kept, right? And the chicks can see the robot inside that compound. It was the robot was visible, and they have put also a small light bulb on the robot, so the chicks also visually can see that this is my mother kind of moving it. Now, and they left the robot in the arena again to go through a random movement. But interestingly, what they found was after a few days of this activity, the robot 99% movement was in that side where the chicks were kept, right? It was not, now it was not moving randomly. Imagine a square box. So the robot 95% movement, 99% movement was on the side where chicks were kept. It was not in complete arena as before, right? And they were mind blown how that is possible, which means that chicks are somehow able to influence the movement of that robot. And there's no local connection. There's nothing connected. It might be something non-local. So one understanding was the chick's intention to be close to the mother made the robot move more near to the chick house than in the entire open. And if you look at the data, the graph, it looks very clearly like where the robot was before and now where they have moved a bit more, right? So these are a few examples in science which very clearly is highlighting that we stay in a world which is connected with energy, and our thoughts, emotions playing a very active role in the life experience we are having for ourselves.
Amazing examples, and also so interesting because obviously a robot is a inanimate, or inanimate in this case, object, and
Exactly.
still the energy somehow would be influencing it. I feel that this is really a different way of looking at things in terms of energy, and we're so used to looking at the world in terms of elements and solid and concrete, and we so used to neglecting or underestimating the power of our emotions in terms of energy or our thoughts. And
Absolutely.
this is so powerful. So now let's say that the audience listening is 200% in the law of attraction, or by now they've switched off anyway. So all the people left are at least a bit curious and interested. How can they start to implement it? How can they start to use the law of attraction or benefit from it to reach whatever goal they're aspiring to, or to find peace in their life?
Yeah. So, what mistake I find people doing is they would want to, let me go and apply this law right now, apply this concept right now. Now, you see, what happens is with that area that you go into the zone of applying maybe whatever tool you're applying, maybe a tool like visualization, or tool like affirmation, or any other practice, and you do it for some time, and then you go back to your natural state. Now, what we have to understand is you cannot apply this tool at a second at a given point of time. The way you are, is the application throughout the day, right? So fundamentally, what is my default energy level? What is my default emotional state? What is my default mental state, which is my content of the mind, my content of the emotional experience I have right now? So, the fundamental way what we have to do is we have to start shifting the very default of who we are in a way. And that's where the entire science of, neuroscience, positive psychology is talking about the power of positive emotions, how happiness, how joy, how gratitude changes people completely. So, moment you start shifting your personality, and I love this, this quote from Dr. Joe Dispenza, very famous in this field, that your personality creates your personal reality. The way you are as a person is the way you are holding a reality around you, right? So fundamentally the application starts with, start building up habits which starts changing you as a person towards something better. So if I audit my mind and I say, okay, what are thoughts generally I carry? Oh, these are thoughts which are negative. Sometimes I carry some past pain, I carry some doubt, I carry some fear, and obviously these are not a very high frequency thought. These are thoughts which doesn't make us feel good. We feel contracted, we feel kind of completely energy drained. So then can I build habits to start training my mind to start building thoughts of higher nature, thoughts of joy, thoughts of happiness, thoughts of positivity, thoughts of growth mindset. Now, when all these thoughts I build and there's an emotion correspondence to it, which I start I experience in my life, then suddenly my entire experience of being changes. From maybe a negative person, I start becoming more optimistic, more positive, more joyful, more happy. And that becomes the foundation of you started to now attract things in your life of that particular nature. Because one of the understanding of law of attraction is that like energy attracts like energy. So your nature would attract things of your nature, and the moment you change that part, suddenly the reality starts changing as well. So a simple example is, imagine this: you go to a college, you go to a company, and if you look at these people at a macro level, you'll find the happiest people are in one group, right? And the people who are generally the negative one, cribbing, complaining, in one group, right? All the backbenchers together. This kind of separation happens when people having similar qualities comes together, because there is certain match of energy. And we say this, right, so often. I do not, my vibe doesn't match with this person, or my frequency is not matching. Now, what is that frequency I'm talking about right now? Something, a resonance I feel. And if you feel the resonance, generally it gets attracted in your life in a way. So moment you change your dormant thoughts, your emotions, your energy, right? And we know that because when you're happy, how do you feel? High energy, low energy. When you're sad, how do you feel? Low energy, high energy, right? So how would you then expect that I can be sad throughout the day and hoping something changes in my life drastically? Doesn't happen that way. So if you want something good to happen, a joy, happiness, you need to shift your energy. And can you stay more consistently in a high energy state, right? So that I feel is a more foundational and a permanent way of becoming good at law of attraction, because your fundamental being is now in a higher zone and things happens effortlessly for you.
And apart from anything else, you feel happier. So it's only a win-win, right? Yeah. Even if you didn't attract that amazing goal or what have you, you're still feeling better and you're still, emanating higher, vibrations and joy and happiness. So either way, it's always a win-win. It's what I talk about when I discuss inner transformation for outer success. So I say, first, we need to transform within to get outer success. But even if you don't get out to success, you'll still feel happy to have done the inner transformation. And mostly it does lead to outer success. Great. So now I'm thinking that the people probably listening are thinking, well, this is great. Getting it. If I have high energy, high vibrations, I'll probably attract that. Lovely example within a college or a company, people, similar frequencies hang out together. So the next point would be, what can you do to increase your energy? What can you do to shift internally your thoughts, your emotions to get on the higher state of vibration?
Yeah,
Let's
beautiful.
see if we see eye to eye on this. Let's see if you say exactly everything I say or if it's like a complimentary.
Right, beautiful, no, very good. So I feel whatever you do in an entire day can be divided into two categories: energy generating activities, energy leaking activities, right? So let me first start with what leaks our energy, right? Now imagine this: if you have a fight with somebody, right? Do you feel more energetic, less energetic? more drained I feel. Though with the rush in anger, I feel a bit more active, but after some time, I feel drained in a way, right? Watching social media, if you're consuming the news, what people are doing, the fight, all of it, you find that your distraction has gone, obviously, but your energy has gone down as well, right? Imagine watching television throughout the day, sitting on the couch and doing nothing, no physical activity, energy draining activity, right? Thinking about the bad things in the past or what can go wrong in the future, anxiety or sadness, energy draining activity, right? So if you audit the day, there are so many things we are doing, which is energy leaking activity. First step is, can we stop doing these activities? Can you moderate the time on social media? Can you moderate the television time? Can you stop reading all negative news which comes on newspaper or on a television possibly? Can we start minimizing the time we spend with people who are not very positive as of now? Right? Why do we want to go and speak to somebody who is constantly craving about life? Right? I say namaste, I'll talk to you later, right? So minimize this time. Then think about what are the energy generating activity, right? Think about this part. If you do a morning exercise or a yoga or a meditation practice, we feel super charged up. We have now science backing this up that why meditation is so powerful, right? You go for a walk in nature, you feel extremely lifted possibly. You talk to somebody who's very good, very positive, you feel lifted, right? You smile, you have habits like gratitude, habits like happiness, right? The research today highlights that so many benefits happens when you practice things like happiness, complimenting, gratitude. There are millions of research now in the world today. When people are more happy, they have a higher income, they are better at sales, the relationship improves, health becomes better. So many things can come up in a way, right? So we all subconsciously know what improves our energy. Is a matter of whether I'm doing those activities or not. A kid smiles around 400 times a day, an adult only 20 times, right? And even the research highlights that if you just fake a smile for 20 seconds, your brain actually thinks you're smiling and it releases the happy chemical in the body. You're changing your state, right? So I think what we're talking about right now is building certain habits which are known to us. Look at a child. The child is in present moment, no fear of the past, no fear of the future. The child is enjoying physically moving. In our brain, the way Mother Nature is designed, there's a part called as cerebellum. It is the subconscious, what we call as subconscious mind at the back of the brain. That part holds 80% of brain cells. So out of 86 billion neurons we have in the brain, 80% is that part. And this neuroscientist was talking about this, and she says, Mother Nature has wired you to move because that part controls your movement. So nature wants us to move. And the time we are in right now, movement has stopped, right? So things like this. And then, I was listening to Dr. Huberman, Andrew Huberman, Stanford. He's talking amazing thing about neuroscience. And he says 30 minutes of sun exposure in the morning, right? 30 minutes of facing the sun in the morning. It's so critical. We know now scientifically that's the energy generating activity. Sun gives us life. Imagine if we've watched the morning sun every day, obviously with changing the circadian rhythm and making the depression go out, your sleep becomes better, you feel more energetic as well, right? So these are some of the activities which we have known culturally as well, but somehow we have missed now to really do it. So for me, it's like, find out what makes you come alive. Is it listening to a good music, right? It is talking to a good friend, maybe journaling, and then start putting those in your schedule to do it more often. And then you slowly, automatically, gradually go in a high energy state by default as a habit.
Wonderful. And it's exactly what I talk about. So I'm so glad it's so aligned. I like to call the energy draining activities vampires and the energy generating activities fairies. And I feel the less vampires and the more fairies, the better your life is. And it's interesting because there's always such a huge gap between the knowledge and implementing it. So the number of people who will be listening to this right now and thinking, well, I've heard about meditation and being in nature or exercising, but are you doing it? It's like, it's great. You can hear it all day long, but if you're sitting on the couch and you're not exercising, nothing's going to happen. So sometimes you might get the odd tip that you don't hear as often. For example, I remember Mark Metry on the podcast talking about breath work. Great. People don't mention it as much as others. So maybe sometimes you'll have a new insight, but either way, you need to implement it. And especially what you mentioned with the energy draining activities, doing less of them, because people know that spending hours in front of the TV or scrolling on Instagram all evening doesn't really give them more energy. but they're hooked and they don't really seek to change that. So I feel, again, there's a huge difference between understanding and actually implementing. So this is massive. But yes, all that you said around energy and lifting out energy, this is fantastic. Can you tell us a bit more about the role of neuroscience in the law of attraction? So you mentioned already the part about the back of our brain and 80% of our brain cells and how we're meant to move. That's fantastic. I would love to, hear more around, what's the role that neuroscience plays in the law of attraction?
Oh, beautiful. Now, the two primary research in neuroscience, which is kind of directly applies in law of attraction, right? One science is, we have heard this tool about visualization, right? That visualization is so powerful. People like Michael Phelps, all athletes, Tiger Woods, people like Virat Kohli, Indian cricket team captain, and then we have these actors, Jim Carrey, and they all have talked about visualization, right? Now, the point is, what is so great about it, right? So even if you, for a moment, you leave the aspect of energy that I'm visualizing, I'm attracting something in my life, leave that part. Now, what we know with science, that when you're visualizing, right, the same part of the brain is getting active, which gets active when you really do something, So that we know very clearly. So this was a great research done in Harvard by a scientist called as Pascal Leon, right? He took two groups of people. One group was asked to play piano, and they were taught using five finger how to play piano. And they played piano for like 20 minutes per day, 5 days for 5 weeks, right? And another group was taught how to play piano, but they were asked to play piano in the mind only, not physically, mentally only, right? And for 5 weeks, they kept on doing the practice. So group one, who played the piano physically, right? They saw the brain changes, which part of the brain has got active, what is the circuit got developed, all of it. And this is sensible. Why? Because you played the piano, there's a physical correspondence change in the brain. Interesting, the group two, who simply imagined playing the piano, they did not play the piano at all. When they saw their brain, exact same changes. The same circuits in the brain has formed, which formed in the first group. But they did not touch the piano keys. How is possible? Right? So what they found is that the brain is not able to understand the difference between reality and imagination. What you do and what you imagine to do, somehow the same brain circuits fire, which now simply means I can imagine myself doing an activity which I have not done. And I have tried this as well, just to test this experiment if it really works or not, right? Uh, I can imagine doing an activity, and I can create my brain circuit just by pure imagination, even not doing the physical activity. Now I have, about the future, a circuit laid in my brain which can become my guide to move towards a greater outcome or something I want to achieve for myself. And that's superhuman ability. You can change your brain circuit just by imagination, right? And then more research. One more research was that Brian Oyo from Cleveland Clinic, Ohio. I think Brian Clark from the researcher from Ohio University, from the Cleveland Clinic, Ohio. They did a research. So they took two groups of people, and they made one group. They put their hands under the surgical cast, right? The entire arm was under the surgical cast. They can't move the arm now, right? So one group, they said, do nothing. But the second group, which had the surgical cast, they asked them to imagine moving their wrist, exercising their wrist, right? Again, 20 minutes per day for a month. Now, when they open the wrist, right, and they compare the strength before and after, they found the people who imagine moving their wrist, their strength increased by 2 times compared to the first group. Now, it was under the surgical cast. They can't move the hand any which ways. How come the strength increase? Mental practice. It is called as mental rehearsal. So this becomes the first understanding that why something like neuroscience and this visualization tool has a direct application in LOA. What LOA talks about? Can you imagine to be the person you want to be in the future? So when you're imagining that right now, you are simply shifting your behavior patterns, your belief system, your thought, your emotions, and your brain is now more likely to make you aware about those situations, those opportunities. And that's where comes the second aspect of science, right? In our brain, we have something called as reticular activation system. right? It's a bundle of around 60,000 nerve cells at the back of the brain, which is the gatekeeper of your subconscious mind, right? So all the sensory data except a smell passes through this gateway, right? And this reticular activation system, RAS, its job is to filter data, right? So whatever data comes in, it will filter it. Whatever is important comes in your conscious mind, and whatever is not important, it stays in the subconscious. Which means, imagine if you have, you're sitting right now, I'm sitting here right now, there are 100,000 things happening next to me, but my mind is not bothered to think about it until a dangerous something comes up. Like, I have a cat here, very safe. But if the moment I have a snake here, suddenly my eye will go to that snake because it's a survival threat for me. So the RAS is an internal Google search in a way. Now, what happens is, and all those who are listening right now, they will have this experience in their life. Imagine when you wanted to buy a new car, or you wanted to buy a new dress, or travel a city, go to a vacation. And when you decided about that, suddenly for next week or so, you started seeing that thing everywhere. Maybe on the road, the car hoarding was kept. In the mall, you saw that dress possibly. Now your mind is becoming aware of that thing every particular place. Why it is happening now? Because something which was important now is in your mind very clearly. So this part of the brain, RAS, is now scanning the environment and making you observe those things which are important for you, which were present before, but you have ignored. Now your mind is becoming aware of it out of billions of data available in the world outside right now. So this simply means, and this is very well captured by a MIT professor, Master Institute of Technology professor, Dr. Tara Swart, right? She has a book on this as well, and she writes briefly how neuroscience applies to LOA, the same point he mentions in a way, right? So the key is, moment you become clear, moment you visualize the outcome for yourself, maybe getting a new job or earning a X amount of money or becoming an author, right? And moment you're visualizing, your brain is now learning that this is important, right? And now, out of millions of people on LinkedIn, or millions of books you see across, your mind suddenly gets to those things which would help you to really get to the ultimate outcome for yourself. you know and that's why, in the famous Stanford speech, Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking backward. Like, this happened, this happened, this happened, oh my god, I somehow reached here. So that's the part of the brain which actively plays a role as well, in making your focus go to certain aspects. So I think visualization and RAS, these two things, and there are many more things about neuroscience, but these two are very directly linked on something called as LOA, and how you attract, manifest things in your life in a way. Yes.
Amazing. This is often what I thought about and reflected on and read about in terms of law of attraction. And for me, even people who are skeptical of the idea of energy or vibrations, they can't deny the fact that when you're super focused on something, and you've explained it with the neuroscience term of the reticular activation system, even if you're super even if you even if you don't believe in the whole energetic aspect, you can't deny the neuroscience part of it, the scientific part of focus, which is that once you have your heart set on something, not only will your thoughts go in that direction, but you'll talk more about it, you'll connect with people, and so you'll reach it. So this is the way I would always explain the law of attraction to people who maybe saw it as untangible, or didn't really understand it, or sort of unreachable, or they didn't really get the whole idea of vibration, because I thought everyone's experienced this. Everyone has experienced that, looking for the flat XYZ and talking with their friends and neighbors, and then suddenly they get the flat a day later, a week later. And I feel that in this episode, we've really covered two of the fundamentals, which is, in one case, raise your energy and you will attract higher energy people. And that, again, is kind of logical, because like attracts like. So if you're super positive and dynamic, super positive, dynamic people will be attracted to you, and they probably have a more positive view on life and probably more filled with opportunity, more of an abundance mindset. Therefore, you'll attract more abundance. So that's logical. And then the other side, which is, if you really focused on something, and you've explained it brilliantly with the law, the neuroscience aspect of the reticular activation system. So if you really focused on something, it'll be there in your back of your mind the whole time. And therefore, you will start to take actions and thoughts in that direction. So I feel we've covered a lot. We're already approaching the last couple of minutes before the end of today's episode. What would you like to leave the audience with in terms of law of attraction? What would be the last takeaway or nugget of insight that you'd like to share with the audience today?
No, I think, the time we are in right now, it's really asking us to really not just wait for something to tell us what to do, what not to do. We're in a time wherein we need to become the experimenter ourselves, right? So instead of waiting for science or something else to really, tell us what to do, why not go and really put yourself out there to see, I think, is working or not for you? I think evidence is the loudest, voice you can have for yourself in a way. So I think for people, instead of just waiting and thinking, obviously if you're interested in science, there are enough science right now. Go and read about these things. Dr. Amit Goswami, a quantum physicist, he talks amazingly more deeper science about how these concepts works in a way. But I think more important would be, why not start, maybe just put, say, universe, I want to test you, right? If it's really an application, I want to test you right now. So put an intention, very clear intention. What is that you want for yourself? Maybe, you will say, I want to have a surprise, unexpected flow of money in my life. I want to have maybe a job or opportunity which I've never thought of in a way, right? Put an intention out there. And that's one part of it. Second part of it is, what are the emotions you want to feel or you would feel once that intention is accomplished, right? So maybe you'll feel joy, will feel happiness. So why not spend few minutes a day just to feel that emotion of joy and happiness, which you'll feel once this has happened for you, right? And these two things combine together, and do it several times a day. Maybe like 2 minutes thinking of the outcome and feeling the joy, and several times a day, and for a week's time. And notice if something somehow miraculously changes in your life. Maybe you end up coming across something like that. Once you have an experience like this, right, you now know something is working, right? And leaving apart all the wisdom of the ancient traditions, thousands of years, leaving the science, now you have your own particular science for yourself, right? So I think we are in that time where life is asking us to create, whether we do it or not. Any which ways we are creating, you cannot not create, because you are thinking, feeling, and believe, and really, so for not for these purposes, but even if you understand neuroscience or habits or positive psychology, you know why it's important to be in gratitude or in state of happiness, right? So I think it's time for us to really change some of the fundamental aspects and realize how much potential we carry, how much beautiful life is, and how much we can create if we just kind of come into alignment, right? So I think that would be the ultimate message which I want to send out to people.
What a lovely, empowering message for people listening or watching this on YouTube. You heard what Avinash says. Try and experiment yourself and see how this works in your life, because like you said, there's no better evidence than feeling it and experiencing it firsthand. So I feel we've covered so much. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for tuning in, Avinash.
Thank you, Katie. My pleasure. Thank you so much. God bless.